Hi guys, I'm Giuseppe Sapori, and I'm excited to announce that TTS Pro 2.0 is finally here. I want to remember that if you are an existing user of the previous version of TTS Pro, you will get free updates for it. You will receive an email for download in the right time. Now in this video, I want to show you some of the new functions included in TTS Pro 2.0, which add amazing features to the original panel. In this new version, TTS Pro has 8 pages that you can recognize from the icons on top. They are layer masks, RGB masks, blend, dodge and burn and range masks, colors, enhancements, a second page of enhancements, and finishing. Now the first things I want to point out is that all the pages that regards luminosity masks and blending now have the stack and outline images on top. They're in the first page, then RGB mask and blend. Now before move to the other page functions, let's see how it works stack and outline buttons. Basically, stacks works if you have 2 or more documents open like me and you want to put together in one window. To align the exposure, press Auto Align. For example, this is when images are captured without tripod. The first page regards luminosity masks. There's a button to create 16-bit luminosity masks and one to delete them. This is in the middle is the main section of the first page. Is where we create our luminosity masks. This section in the middle is divided by 2 drop-down menus that I will explain shortly. While down here is how we choose what we want to do with our masks. Now in the middle part of the panel, there's some numbers button that correspond to the mask, and about this we can select lights, darks and midtones. For every of these we have 6 different levels of selection. So to begin with the layer, the first drop-down menu, I select Lights 4, that creates a new adjustment layer with our selection that we can switch every time we need with the other masks. Once we choose the selection needed, we can move to this section below on the first page to make the major adjustments of our selection. The panel shows the mask, but I can press RGB to show the image or C mask to come back to show the mask. If I double-click on layer, I can make a selective adjustment based on mask. And I can switch it between all the other adjustment layer here, like hue saturation, levels, black and white filter, or again, photo filter. And for every layer I select, the changes are specifically on the selected areas by the mask. Now let me show you another function about the selection. I can create a new mask and I press Manual. Here I can adjust my selection as I need by moving the slider here, and then I can make my adjustments on the mask I created in this way. Let's take a look now at the channel drop-down menu in the first page. In this case, every time I select a mask, we have the active selection that we can use by the buttons below. For example, if I select again Lights 3 and I create a black mask, the selection applies to it. Now, with a wet brush, it's possible to paint over the image, only affecting the area selected. As you can see, matching ends remain visible, and every time I paint over this area, the only area affected is the selected one. Now I deselect, remove the layer mask created, and I put the darker exposure on top. In this case, I select darks to work on a darker exposure in order to brighten the selected areas. Now, selecting a white mask and a black brush, I can brighten using the exposure below. The selection visible with merging ends, we showed how the paints only affects the areas we need. This is how it looks before and after. Now we can move to the second page, RGB mask, which is distinguished by red, green and blue colors here. It works similar to the first page. After creating a mask, I can edit by clicking on the adjustment layer, but in this case the selection is made on RGB channel. And I can always use the below section in Luminosity mask page to change the adjustment layer or create different masks. For example, I can create a mid-tone 2 blue channel mask. Then I go back to the adjustment layer in page 1 and I select Use Saturation. Now I can increase blue saturation selectively for the blue channel. The third page is dedicated to digital blending. In addition to the stack and outline buttons we have already seen, there are two more buttons on top for fast digital blend. Fast blend light or fast blend dark, depending on what image you are blending on top. For example, now I use fast blend darks because I'm blending a darker exposure into a brighter exposure. Or if I have a brighter exposure on top, I use fast blend lights. Now let's see with how the blend function. It's possible to proceed here with multi-level, but before proceeding make sure to put the levels you want to blend visible and check the instruction for any further information about the auto blend. To begin with, I have my images ready, so now I'm blending a darker exposure into a brighter exposure, so I have to press Auto Blend Darks. Now we have an auto blend with the image below, and the creation of a mask group that we can apply to the key numbers that are on the right. Once we're done, press Select, and the selected mask will be applied to the image. But it's always possible to create a manual selection of this mask. Through Manual button, we can manually modify our mask to obtain the selection desired. While instead, if you need to delete all the created mask and return back to the levels in stack, there is the Delete button that brings you back at the beginning. Everything we did for Auto Blend Dark also applies to Auto Blend Lights, but in this case we need the brighter image on top. All the other buttons are the same of what we see for Auto Blend Darks. Let's take a look on all dodge and burn functions inside TTS Pro. At the first look, there are three different dodge and burn buttons. They are all very similar ways to dodge and burn. It depends on which you prefer, but what we have to say is that these three buttons all have destructive application of dodge and burn. If we need a non-destructive and selective application, we have to go to this section above, where we can apply dodge and burn on highlights, shadows and midtones. Now I'm focusing on highlights, and I set them for my needs. Then from here, I can select a brush or dodge and burn, reducing or increasing the size, and then select the white color. And now just paint in to dodge my highlights in the selection I made. And that's the before and after. We can make another try, moving to another picture, always using dodge and burn with highlights again. Press OK. And this time, with the brush tool, I select the orange color, and I'm going to paint in the sky in order to increase the yellow tone of the sunset. This effect is based on the selection made with highlights and not destructive on the image. We can always change the blending mode and decrease the opacity if we need a soften effect. Let's see the color page, where we can make all the adjustments on colors. On the top of this page, we have two color correction, correct colors and correct colors too. The first color correction, in this case, give a cooler look that we can decrease the opacity to find a medium point. While color correction 2 gives, in this case, a less strong cold effect, neutralizing the color cast. Just try what the best fits on the image. Now, the other functions in the color page are these 6 buttons where we can make our image cold, really cold, or very cold, or again warm, really warm, or very warm. So this is cold, that's the before and after. Cold 2, a stronger effect. And cold 3, that is the strongest. And the same with warm. This is the light warm effect. Warm 2, that is middle strong effect. And the warmest one. And after, other effects on this page are color adjust and atom colors. What about color adjust? If we press here and click on the adjustment layer, we have the sliders, and here we can change the brightness of a single tones. Look at the greens from this slider. I'm brightening them up or darkener. So we can have a grid control from here to the colors. This is useful when you got edit an image with many different colors. And next we have autumn colors. This is useful to give an incredible autumn look to the green foliage. Just press here to completely transform the greens into red. And we can decrease the opacity for a different softener effect. These buttons here are instead to decrease color saturation. If we need to increase all colors, press Vivid Colors. If we need to desaturate all the colors, press that. If we need to saturate individual colors, press the corresponding button. So we have the red saturated, or green, or blue, until yellow. You will see the color becoming stronger. And you can press this many times as you want to strengthen the effect. The same it works for desaturate every single colors here, corresponding to every button to lessen the effect. Now we are in the Enhancement page, where we can find a series of effects to add to our image. As you can see, it's divided into some sections. We have orton effect, glow, details, and some extra effects at the bottom of this page. Let's begin with orton effect. It gives a soft magical feel to our scene. Here, just set the radius and press OK. Now that's the before and this is after. And even if this is very soft, I recommend to keep this layer with around 10% opacity. There are other ortho effects. We can press ortho effect details, that's a slightly different effect. Then we can reduce the opacity also here to soften the effect. Or again, we have ortho effect bright, that creates a brighter ortho effect. And of course you can bring down the opacity of that layer. And we have the opposite, a darker ortho effect, that it makes the scene darker. And that's the before and after. And that is for the ortho effect. Here we have instead glow 1 and glow 2 that are very useful to lighten and darken the image, adding some glow to the scene. Glow 1 creates a new filled black layer that allows to add glow with a wet brush. Glow 2 creates a free layer that can use to add glow the same with any brush color to lighten, darken or coloring the scene. The layer comes with 30% opacity, but of course we can decrease it for a softer effect. Let's move to detail section. Also here is divided until 4 under options. Hide details is a very powerful detail effect based on add frequency separation that instantly add details smoothing edges. Strong detail is a more strong effect that comes directly with a layer mask in order to remove the effect in the wanted areas. For example, now I can select a black brush and remove the effect from that rocks, and less opacity for a softener effect. Next, we'll talk about detail shadows, that as the name say, it gives detail to shadows. Just set the range here and press OK. That's the before and after. And detail highlights, that works the same for highlights. Here we can of course decrease the opacity, soften the effect or add a layer mask. As last, we'll talk about this bottom section of Enhancement Page. We have S-curve, fade effect that creates a fading atmosphere look in the scene. Then warm highlights that apply a warming filter to highlights, and you can press this as many times as you want or softening the effect. Warm shadows, apply a warm to shadows, and you can see here level stack. Cold highlights, that makes the same for cold filter to highlights. And cold shadows that apply cold filters to shadows, and that's the before and after. And you can press this as many times as you want to stronger the effect or reduce the opacity to a softer one. Here we are in the second page of enhancement, that's composed by contrast section, light and shadows, and some other effect at the bottom. Add contrast, apply contrast using apply image effect, while luminosity mask contrast uses luminosity masks. And here we have midtones, darks, and light contrast layers. Each one has a mask applied, and for every of that layer we can open up and make a very targeted adjustment for a specific tone. Now I'm working on lights adjustment layer, but I can make the same things for darks and midtones. Okay, that's the before and after. And of course we can decrease the opacity for soften the effect. Now let's take a look to lights and shadow section. there's two buttons to lighten or darken the image, increase the highlights with more highlights, or decrease them using less highlights. Then more shadows or less shadows to make adjustment on the shadows. Now I select all and delete all this layer to move to these other filters. The first one is Color Pop, that makes your image with a color boost. And by decreasing the opacity, we can create some interesting mid effect. Then we have cross-processing that simulate the cross-processing film. Then we have sensor dust that helps to locate and remove dust spot on your image. And the black and white filters. And of course I can bring down the opacity down here. Then we have sharpen, that makes a very good job about sharpening. That comes with layer mask to refine the sharpness effect. Just select the mask and with a black brush paint where you want to remove it. As last we have chromatic aberration filter. This is a simple and great way to remove chromatic aberration. I'm gonna show you how does it work. After we launch the effect, we have to zoom in and find your chromatic aberration. Then with a wet brush, because our layer mask is black, go to paint over the chromatic aberration to completely remove it. And you can see here the before and after. And after zoom out, you'll not see the differences with retouched areas. Here we are in the finishing page, where you can find all the effects useful for completing the image. On top we have a vignette section. There's two types of them. A light vignette that you can see creates a soft vignetting over the scene, and a strong vignette if you need something stronger. And of course, reducing the opacity, you can soften the effect. Then we have remove noise. And with a zoom in, you can see how the effect removes noise on the rock. As next, we have watermark button. If I press this, it will put a watermark on the bottom left. But this needs more information about the use. To upload your logo, when you press watermark button, you have to press Alt keyboard. Select your logo and press open. Then in a new window, you have to select the opacity of the watermark layer. For example, 50. In the next screen, we have to select the watermark scale. When that's done, I uploaded all my data for my logo. So now, I press again watermark to have my logo on the bottom left of the image. Now, let's move to saving options. Here we have Save for Web by width and height. If I press this, the panel will resize the image in a new document. On the right, there's a new sharpen layer to better resolve the image on web. Now if I zoom in, this is the output work. Just save it as you normally do, and the image is ready for web. As last, below this page, there's all the other saving options. Here you can select what you need. So for example, if I select JPEG, a new window will appear to select where I want to save the file. In the second screen, we have to input the file name, and when you're done, press OK. And that's it for this video about the use of TTS Pro 2.0. You can always check the manual by the link below this page for the use of every single option, and don't forget to visit the support page for for installation instructions and frequently asked questions about it. So guys, that's all. You will find the download link for TTS Pro 2.0 below this video. Thank you very much and see you next time.